Hi everyone, hope you're doing great. There's a ton of discussion about voter fraud and stop the steal, and you have the media on one side saying that there's none, and then you have a lot of anecdotal evidence, people on the ground sharing a lot of different things, and you have the Democrat Party and you have the establishment just shutting down any talk of potential voter fraud. Even people in the GOP, Republicans, they're coming out and saying, let's not question the integrity of the election and stuff like that. So I figured I'd kind of give my thoughts on it. On the one hand, you do have to be careful making accusations that they're voter fraud. I'm a big fan of President Trump, but I think unless he has more evidence than is known, I think just kind of saying it with 100%, like there's voter fraud, there's all these things going on. I think, you kind of have to be careful of that. On the other hand, you have these situations like in Detroit, like in Philadelphia, where vote watchers are being pushed out. They're not allowed to see what's going on. And if they are allowed, they have to be 25 feet away and you can't actually see anything on the ballots. And then there's other examples, like the U.S. Postal Office told the employees in Michigan to backdate ballots to the 3rd. In Nevada, you have, I think it's 3,000 people that they found some issue with, I forget the exact details on there. There's a whole bunch of, people are sharing all kinds of videos, and there's a whole Stop the Steal movement. And I don't know, to me, it could very well potentially be an effort to steal the election. But at the same time, it could very well be that everything is legit. So I think my thought is everybody has to probably calm down a little bit on the accusations. And when there are legitimate concerns, I think they need to be investigated. So instead of in Michigan, the judge shuts down a recount effort, the judge just shut down some effort in Michigan. Instead of doing that, what they should be doing is trying to be transparent. And if there are concerns brought up about certain things, like in Michigan, the night before, on November 3rd, you have two trend lines of the votes, and Trump is ahead. Out of a sudden, in the middle of the night, you have a 100% jump up in Biden, and then Biden gets really close to Trump. Is there a legitimate reason for that? There could very well be. But I haven't seen anybody in the Michigan government addressing that issue. And to me, that issue needs to be addressed. And the same thing with Wisconsin. They had that same up spike, just a straight up line and if you compare the numbers, the increase was 100% going towards Biden. Why is that? Was there an error in the computer system? Why did it happen in both Michigan and Wisconsin? Are they using the same system? Or was it an effort? Did somebody go in there and add a bunch of votes? Those things, you can't just ignore them. Like the media is just, there's no voter fraud, there's no voter fraud. Well, how do they know there's no voter fraud? Just because, we need to trust the integrity of the election? That is absurd. But it is also not a good idea to just assume that because there's an up spike that there's a bunch of terrible activity going on. There could very well be legitimate reasons. But this whole effort by Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of the media, even Fox, I was just watching Fox, and they're questioning the integrity of the election. Yeah, you want to question it. And if it's legitimate, you have the documentation to prove it. So why are these governments, Why is the Philadelphia people and the Detroit people so worried about being transparent about how things are counted? Why are they so worried about it? Why don't, if there's nothing to worry about, be transparent, provide the information, and the Michigan government, why don't they let just even if it's just do a sample, take a sample of the ballots and see 5,000 of them. Take a random sample of 5,000 ballots and then look at those ballots and see if they're all legitimate. If one out of the 5,000 had some discrepancy, okay, maybe, things are probably good. But if out of a sudden you have 500 out of 5,000 with some kind of error, they weren't registered, they weren't actually, whatever it is, then you do the sample and you see what the error rate is in that sample size, and then you do a recount. I mean, it's just like people just lack basic logic. It blows my mind. Like, you can't do some basic things to make the election look more legitimate. I mean, how bad does that look when the Detroit ballot counters and the Philadelphia ballot counters, they try and keep vote watchers out, or they try and keep the ballot count watchers out? It just looks really bad. So maybe everything is fine, but don't do things like that if you want people to trust the integrity of the election. I mean, it's insane what they're doing. And especially when the elections are so close like this, you have Georgia very close, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, and then they were very close in all of these, and then out of a sudden you start getting it flipping towards Biden. Now, there could be a legitimate reason for that, but you need to be transparent about those reasons. And when things are that close and things look kind of bad, when out of a sudden you're holding off calling these states, they call everything else, but you hold off calling these, even though, say, in Pennsylvania, Trump was ahead by a lot. And then that just whittles down, and it's like 80% of the vote coming in is then Biden. Now, could have to do with the mail-in ballots, but let's verify that. Let's look at it. Let's be more transparent instead of these judges trying to shut everything down, shut the lawsuits down. They should go in there and say, okay, how can we figure out a way to look at the legitimacy of this election, look at the legitimacy of all the ballots, verify all of them, really look in depth, take a sample of 5,000, really look in depth at them, and see what the potential fraud rate is. Is it going to potentially change the election? And the same thing with all these other states. You could do something like that would not necessarily require a complete recount of everything, just some way of verifying some of these discrepancies that are occurring. And then you have all these people sharing the videos of what they've experienced at different elections when the recounts were happening. Instead of Facebook and Twitter trying to suppress everything, those things should be looked at. Maybe those people are making things up. Maybe they're not, but you don't shut them all down. I mean, it's sickening. And Facebook and Twitter, Twitter claims that, oh no, we don't have any influence on the election. Yeah, right. Of course they have influence on an election. If you're suppressing tweets from anybody who's against or expresses a different opinion than you, they suppress the tweets and they hide the tweets and say, this is not verified, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's ridiculous. Free speech, you should be allowed to say pretty much whatever you want. You don't want to incite violence, things like that. But things about the election, like, if those people are wrong, then they're wrong. But let everybody else figure it out. Like, let them do the research. You don't have to have the media and Facebook and Twitter and all these big tech companies coming together and trying to force their view down on everybody. It is craziness what is going on. It is craziness. And these people, by not being more transparent, they're creating distrust. It's not everybody questioning it. If you want to create trust, say, okay, that's a valid question. We'll look at it. Here's the evidence to show that that's not what happened. Seems pretty simple to me. Anyway, I will hopefully share more of my thoughts as this goes on. If you like what I'm saying, you like my channel, you want to hear more from me, please like my channel. Please like this video, subscribe. If I get enough interest, maybe I'll continue doing videos. If I don't get enough interest in my channel, then I probably won't. But I do enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. I'm going to be talking about political stuff and then also business related stuff. But if you want to hear more from me, please subscribe. Thank you.